The old man is back, baby! Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, we all celebrate the return of the one, the only, the old man of Armageddon himself, Mr. Old BABYYYY, Lord Commissar Sebastian Yarrick. Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, many people believe that the old man had indeed kicked the bucket, taken down by none other than Angron, the chosen champion and greatest general of the one and only Lord of Brass and Blood. Corn. Indeed, everyone was thinking that the next time we got to Armageddon, there would be one hell of a ring match dedicated to him versus the one and only Gazgul Mug Urkthraka, prophet of both the Gork and the Mork. However, unfortunately, or fortunately depending on which way you swing it, that grudge match is seemingly not coming anytime soon. But what is coming is another war for Armageddon, which would make this the 5th war for Armageddon technically. But regardless of what war it is, regardless of who's fighting in it, everybody is so incredibly happy to see the old man back in action. Not just back in action, but with a brand spanking new model, and look at that! I absolutely adore this, because the first time I saw it, I had to do a double take because I wasn't sure if this was the old model, but looking at it and the old model, this is a perfect, faithful recreation of that old model. It is wonderful. And it's so good, bro. The old man got done justice. Yet whereas the old man of Armageddon got justice done to him, many people in the comment section of that video that GW released, go check it out, pretty good video, they were quick to point out that there was one particular element of Armageddon and the Armageddon story that was seemingly absent. That being the Armageddon Steel Legion, the Imperial Guard regiment unique to Armageddon. But in this trailer, we see Kriegsmen and what appear to be Cadians. But why are there Kriegsmen and Cadians only on Armageddon? The old man is there, but none of his Steel Legion is either, so many people were a little worried by this. I mean, you know, it probably is just the case like GW just forgot that they existed because GW's on this thing where if they don't make models for it, they don't really like to include it, which is kinda lame because it's the Armageddon Steel Legion of Armageddon, the War of Armageddon. This is them, this is their whole place. It's like the Siege of Cadia without Cadians. I mean, come on, what is GW trying to tell us? You're telling me that, like, what, the Armageddon Steel Legion is just all wiped out? I mean, come on. I mean, they're not, right? No, calm your horses. I'm not gonna go into a whole theory about, you know, what if, when, and where, and how. I don't really know enough. We only have like a 2-minute trailer. Even I can't pull that much bullshit off a 2-minute video. But that does beg the question. Why did GW choose not to include the Armageddon Steel Legion in this promotional video? Because jokes and memes aside, GW most definitely has not forgotten that the Armageddon Steel Legion exists. They do indeed exist. And I doubt that GW would be so brazen to kill off an entire guard regiment without a good reason. So, ladies and gentlemen, that begs the question. Where are the Armageddon Steel Legion? And what on earth is going to be their role, if any they have, in the 5th war for Armageddon? By the way, I'm assuming it's going to be the next 5th war for Armageddon. This could just still be the 4th and Yarrick is just coming back, but the 5th war for Armageddon sounds cool with the return of the old man. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about that today. I probably should have introduced this video way early. We're like, what, 4 minutes in at this point? Yeah. But, yeah. Anyway, we're talking about the Armageddon Steel Legion, Commissar Sebastian Yarrick, and what, if anything, is going to happen with them in the 5th or 4th war of Armageddon. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, way too late, let's get cracking on with today's video. So to learn a bit more about Commissar Sebastian Yarrick, we need to learn a bit more about the Armageddon Steel Legion. The Armageddon Steel Legion is a unique Imperial Guard regiment. For the few of you new folks who don't know, back in the day, GW had multiple different kits for multiple different regiments. Of course, you had Kadachan, Cadians, and Krieg, those were the big three that still managed to survive the Purge, but there were several other metal miniatures, including the Destroying Firstborn, my beloved, the Challengers and Raiders, love the tanky boys, the Mordian Iron Guard, I heard you like Victorian era warfare, the Elysian Drop Troops cause ODSTs are fucking sick, and of course, the Armageddon Steel Legion, aka Mechanized Warfare Personified. Those were not all the Imperial Guard regiments, and if I happen to miss your favorite Imperial Guard regiment, it was not an accident, it was an act of sheer spite and malice, and you should be very upset by it. So upset that you should type it down in the comment. Multiple comments. Leave a lot of comments, it's good for the video. I mean, spite and malice. However, speaking of malice, we then come to the Armageddon Steel Legion. Now, I could waffle on and on and on, but as per usual, it's better to let the professionals handle this. So ladies and gentlemen, let's learn a bit more about the Armageddon Steel Legion, taken from Imperial Guard Codex, 5th edition. Mechanized infantry companies are normally quite rare in the Imperial Guard. This is because it is difficult for most Imperial Guard commanders and planetary governors to obtain and maintain enough of the vehicles needed for such formation. Amongst those few rare regiments that can equip their companies so, the most famous and celebrated are those raised on Armageddon. This hive-world is one of the chief manufacturing planets for chimeras, producing countless numbers for uses across the Imperium. The extremely industrialized nature of Armageddon means that a far higher proportion of its regiments are mechanized infantry. It is for this reason that the hive-world's regiments are known as Steel Legions. Fully mobile, the Chimera-mounted infantry squadrons of the Steel Legion regiments are capable of overrunning enemy positions with large convoys before the infantry dismount to finish them off. The ash wastes of Armageddon are filled with corrosive toxins and industrial pollution. Were a man to breathe the air of Armageddon for any extended period, his lungs would quickly rot. As such, all members of the Steel Legion wear protective clothing such as trench coats, gloves, and visors, so as to minimize the exposure to their world's polluted atmosphere. Most notably, every trooper carries a rebreather unit capable of filtering out the worst of the airborne poisons. The rebreathers of senior officers are often fashioned in the visage of a grinning skull in an attempt to unnerve the superstitious orcs that have ravaged their war-torn home in recent years. The Steel Legions reserve a particular hatred for orcs, who in their lust for war have smashed whole hive cities asunder and whose presence continues to plague Armageddon. It is not only guardsmen who need protection from Armageddon's noxious environment. All the vehicles employed by the Armageddon Steel Legions are fully enclosed and airtight to safeguard passengers from the acidic and toxic atmosphere as they travel the great ash wastes. Even the great banners of the Steel Legion are coated in highly resistant substances that prevents them from decaying in the acritic wastes. Many of the Steel Legion troopers are drafted from amongst the cramped populations of Armageddon's massive hive cities, where only the ruthless survive the ceaseless and brutal gang wars. Many of the Armageddon Underhive's most notorious gangs are conscripted directly into the Imperial Guard, without the need for additional training, their ruthless skills proving more than adequate. Armageddon has a massive population and is capable of raising a large number of Imperial Guard regiments. Indeed, at the height of the Second War for Armageddon, more regiments were being raised each year from the population of Armageddon than from any other two worlds in the entire Segmentum Solar combined. Most of the Steel Legion regiments that were raised at this time were destroyed during the Second War for Armageddon, but many were refounded decades later when the Greenskins returned once more to plunge the beleaguered hive world into an all-consuming fight for survival. The people of Armageddon are therefore no strangers to warfare. They give no quarter and expect none in return. The 339th Armageddon Steel Legion, the Ironheads. The 339th earned the title Ironheads during the battles with the tank forges of Hive Tempestura during the Third War for Armageddon. So massive was the factory that the entire battles were fought within, with Leman Russ, Chimera, and Basilisk maneuvering and firing as they would in the open expanses of Armageddon's ash wastes. At one point, the 339th held a front line demarcated by a long conveyor belt, along which vital components for Leman Russ battle tanks trundled even as battle raged all around. At the height of battle, the entire regiment was mounted up in chimeras that had just rolled off the production line and had not even had a coat of primer applied. The 339th made a mechanized assault along the length of the factory, smashing through the Orc lines and pursuing the hated foe into the polluted ash wastes of Armageddon Prime. The Armageddon Steel Legion is the epitome of mechanized warfare. Because the boys on Armageddon saw the good old Chimera and they thought, that's good, but goddammit do I want more of it. For those of you wondering, the Armageddon Steel Legion has its historical origins not in the World War II era of Germany, mind you. When people think of armored warfare and they see the Stahlhelm, they think, oh, German during World War II. But that's not it actually. If you look into it further, particularly with the note of the chemically treated trench coats as well as airtight seals on their vehicles, these guys are actually based on the post-World War II, early Cold War era armies, more specifically the nuclear Soviet army, with a bit of East German influence thrown in there, hence the Stahlhelm, with a bunch of World War II military surplus being used in its early days post-World War II. You see, these formations were expected to operate in a nuclear hellscape because nukes went boom boom. Now Armageddon may not have any nukes on it, or it may have, we don't really know, but it certainly is a hellscape, so it makes sense to draw inspiration from our real-world history, at least in that regard. But enough of the real-world nonsense, back to the good old fantasy of Warhammer 40k. The Steel Legion are the industrial might of humanity made manifest. They love chimeras, they love heavy weapons, they love grenade launchers, and they love flamethrowers. Whilst Armageddon has a lot of cities to them, it also has a lot of ash wastes, big, wide, expansive areas, which are perfect for armored warfare. But even in the confines of a city, the streets are indeed big enough for even Leman Russ battle tanks to accompany them quite easily. Not to mention, if you're going down a narrow street, you'd rather be inside a tight metal box than on your own, especially when there are orcs and literal poisonous air outside. The Armageddon Steel Legion is meant to overwhelm the enemy with superior firepower and numbers. Chimeras are sturdy bastards, but they're not as sturdy as the Leman Russ. The upside means that you can produce much more of them compared to one Leman Russ. Combine that with the love of the Steel Legion's heavy weapons, means that they will unload a sheer amount of devastating firepower, be it form of heavy bolters, multi-lasers, or the sheer wrath of their lasgun carbines. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Steel Legion. Firepower. But it's not the firepower that makes them the Steel Legion, rather it's the mentality behind that. Sheer, pure, and utter destruction. The Armageddon Steel Legion is a personification of hate made manifest. The people of Armageddon despise the orcs, but they made their hellish world even more devastating. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, in the Imperium, hatred is a virtue, and the Armageddon Steel Legion are absolute masters of that virtue to a T. Armageddon is a unique world. It has these wide open expanses such as the Ash Wastes, but then it also has the enclosed cities of the Hive Cities, the definition of brutal urban architecture. It also has equatorial jungles. From here we get a sort of pseudo-sub-regiment of the Armageddon Steel Legion, that being the Armageddon Orc Hunters. These are Armageddon people who have specialized incredibly well in hunting feral savage orcs in the jungles. Essentially, they're a Armageddon version of Catachans. Not as effective, mind you, but still pretty much up there. And as it said in the excerpt, the Armageddon fellows despise the orcs. For good reason. But they've specialized in fighting and destroying orcs. Which kind of goes back to how they use firepower. Because one lasbolt will not stop an orc. 10 lasbolts will probably not stop an orc. 1,000 though. Yeah, 1,000 will put that bastard down. And ladies and gentlemen, when you want to talk about hatred personified, that stubborn defiance, that eternal tenacity, that I don't care what the hell is in front of me, I choose to attack attitude, because fuck you, even if I lose, that doesn't mean that you win, is personified by one man in particular. Because if Armageddon holds hatred as a virtue, there is one man who holds it as a life-governing principle, blessed and ordained by the God Emperor himself, that being none other than Lord Commissar Sebastian Yarrick. But as per usual, instead of hearing me waffle on about this goated giga-chat of a man, let's hear it straight from the horse's mouth, taken from Codex Imperial Guard, 5th edition. Commissar Yarrick is one of the greatest heroes in the entire Imperium. Although he was already a veteran of a dozen campaigns, it was during the Second War for Armageddon that the Commissar rose to fame, fighting against the largest Orc war the Imperium had ever faced, and the most dangerous of all Orc warlords, Ghazghul Thraka. It was Yarrick who kept the battered defenders of Hades' Hive together throughout Ghazghul's repeated assaults. The Commissar's dogged belief in victory inspired the Imperial Guardsmen to prodigious acts of sacrifice and courage. Indeed, so motivated were the soldiers in Yarrick's presence that not a single soldier was executed for cowardice, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Yarrick's masterful leadership thwarted the Orcs' attempts to storm Hive Hades time and time again, and his efforts in delaying Ghazghul proved to be the turning point in the war. Commissar Yarrick has always found himself on the front lines and has suffered many wounds during his defense of Hive Hades. Most notably when he fought war boss Ulgard single-handed. The massive greenskin severed the Commissar's arm at the elbow with a snapping battle claw. Fighting through the pain and shock, Yarrick beheaded the war boss with a single sweep of his chainsword, before calmly reaching down and plucking the battle claw from the Orc's twitching body, and holding it aloft for all to see. The Orcs retreated in horror, as the defenders of Hive Hades leapt upon the aliens with indomitable vigor. Only when the Orcs were repulsed did Yarrick allow himself the luxury of passing out. Knowing how the Orc mind worked, Yarrick seized upon their superstitious nature, playing with their primitive fears. Yarrick's reputation spread like wildfire, and a belief grew amongst the greenskins that he could not be killed, possessing as he did the evil eye that could slay an orc at a mere glance. To this end, he had the battle claw modified into a prosthetic limb to replace his lost arm. Later, he lost his left eye in a firefight and had it replaced with an implant that could fire a powerful laser. If the orcs thought he had an evil eye, By the Emperor, an evil eye he would have. Without Commissar Yarrick, Armageddon and all its surrounding systems would surely have been lost to the Greenskins. Ever since that time, Yarrick has devoted his life to ridding the Imperium of the so-called Beast of Armageddon. Heroes of Armageddon, you have restored to the evil savagery of the orcs, and they have nothing left for you to fear. So raise high the black banners of vengeance. Now is our time. Commissar Sebastian Yarrick during the Third War for Armageddon. Lord Commissar Sebastian Yarrick is one of the greatest Imperial characters in all of Warhammer 40k. He symbolizes the old man, the guardsman, who has managed to kick ass and take names, not by any special magic, not by power armor, not by gene seed, not any type of nonsense or alien technology, but by purely being a spiteful old man. Also, for those of you wondering why I call him Lord Commissar Sebastian Yarrick, and sometimes he's just referred to as Commissar Yarrick, homie got promoted eventually. That's basically the long and short of it. Also, Lord Commissar Sebastian Yarrick sounds a lot cooler than just Commissar Sebastian Yarrick, and if anyone deserves an upgrade, it's definitely our boy Yarrick over here. But in Warhammer 40k, especially when it comes to the Imperial Guard, special named characters are supposed to represent their faction to a T. Their faction is the idea of a certain element, be it defiance or incredible firepower, ferocity, etc. Then the special character takes that and makes it perfect. It is a personification of that. And when it comes to Sebastian Yarrick, that is absolutely true. This man is the Imperial Guard. Bitter, old, spiteful, but not callous and not an idiot. He doesn't throw away lives randomly, but he is unforgiving in his duty to the Emperor. In short, you do your job, you won't have a problem with him. But Emperor forbid you try and slack in the face of this Commissar, because you're not getting a bolt round to the face. You're getting a bit of snip-sip from that old claw. But if you read into Yarrick, everything about him is it's so badass. He was raised by his grandfather, who was named Sebastian Yarrick, until he was like 7 or 8, but then some Xenos landed on Armageddon and then killed his grandfather, which then means he was inducted into the School of Progenium because his grandfather was a guardsman. And Yarrick, at that tender old age of like 10, because he had survived like 3 years just beaming Xenos with bricks, he took his grandfather's name in honor, which means Sebastian Yarrick isn't technically his name, it's his grandfather's name. He's like, I will now honor you. Everything about this man is badass. And it makes sense that we get a badass character to fight one of the most deadliest foes in all the Imperium, Ghazghul Maguk Thraka, and one of the most badass places in the world, one of the most badass regiments in the world, the Armageddon Steel Legion. But then that begs the question, if the Commissar is so badass, if the Steel Legion is so badass, well, where is the Steel Legion in the latest video? Now, whilst it's indeed possible GW just decided not to include them because they don't make models anymore, that is a very realistic answer, but it's a very shitty answer, I'm not gonna lie. The whole, yes, we don't make models for them, so we're gonna eliminate them from lore entirely, just feels really fucking bad. Like, I get it from a marketing standpoint, but this really feels like the corporate overlords are taking over in favor of everything else, and that just don't sit right with me. So, I'm going to do some bullshit. I'm going to make up a theory because of one single image that I saw in the trailer, and I'm going to talk about it. Because, well, this is a lot better than GW just deciding that the Steel Legion don't exist anymore. Well, I say it's a lot better. In this theory, the Steel Legion might very well just be dead. Anyway, the theory. If you watch that video, which you really should by the way, you'll see that there is a particular point where we get a map. That map shows what is assumedly Hive Hades, one of the main hives. Maybe it's Hive Prime, who knows. And you see that the green is just in the middle. Everywhere else is all red. And presumably that's the orcs. Now, it's very interesting. It could be the case that this hive just cut off, but given how the Imperial officer in the beginning is saying head to the transports and leave, I don't think that's the case. Because we've seen again and again in Armageddon, if a hive is cut off, an attempt of some kind is made to break through to it. Also, I don't think that there is any hive world on Armageddon that has enough space for 2 populations worth of a hive. Thus, it's my reasoning that this guy is saying, hey, Armageddon is lost, let's get off world. Not to mention he says, I can't ask you to die for a world that was already lost. Given all these small hints, I think this hive is the lost Imperial controlled hive of Armageddon. Meaning that the orcs have taken over the planet in its entirety. And that would kind of explain where the Steel Legion went. The Steel Legion is born, bred, and raised in Armageddon. Its vehicles are built on Armageddon, its men are raised there, they're trained there, they're taken from the gang hives there, everything. Armageddon is the Steel Legion. Without Armageddon, there is no Steel Legion. So, if we go off this theory that Armageddon is basically overrun, that there's one hive left, that means that the Steel Legion have lost basically almost all their manpower as well as their vehicles. Because I don't think you've really been on Armageddon before. The idea of refugee and prisoners and all that nonsense, yeah, no, those motherfuckers are dead as a bag of bricks. Now, whilst yes, it is incredibly unlikely that there's literally no Steel Legion left alive, it would make sense why most of the shots we see are literally just Kriegsman and Cadian, imported guard troops. Because that's all that's there. And even then, in that video, the dude does reference to those born, bred, and raised on Armageddon, meaning that Steel Legion does still indeed exist, but it could be that they're preparing for a counterattack. That could be my idea. And it would kind of make sense like this. The Old Man of Armageddon comes back. Also, we get a little bit of a glimpse from the community post where they posted Yarrick's model. He's basically held together by spit, duct tape, and hope at this point, which means that he probably went in for some surgery or something, but he's back now. It could be that as the orcs are, completely demolishing this hive, the last hive, it could be that Yarrick is preparing a counterattack. And what better to counterattack with than mechanized formations, a la the Steel Legion. I could totally see it like this. Armageddon is basically going to shit, everyone's thinking, oh no, what do we do? The old man pulls up, scrapes together every single last Steel Legionary that exists, put them all together in one giant, massive force, and has the rest of the Imperial Guard drive the orcs around one hive, then launches a surprise attack and just wipes them out, leading to the Imperium reconquering a bunch of Armageddon and back to the stalemate, quid pro quo, etc., so on and so forth. Now that is just my humble opinion, and I could 100,000% be wrong. I probably am wrong, because I made all this bullshit together off like a few images and a couple of voice lines, but I think it's a fun idea. Also, it's very Commissar Yarrick-y, because people often wonder about Commissars in particular, Yarrick especially. We all know that Kane is an exception to the rule, so is Gaunt, but people often wonder about Yarrick, because we see that Yarrick is indeed a Commissar. He does some quote-unquote commissary things, but that's the thing. Most Commissars we see in 40k are meant to be oh, Warhammer 40k is so bad. But Yarrick is a man who values duty above all else. There are times where he has to execute good officers, and he knows that he's executing good men, and he knows that they want to do the right things, but the fact of the matter is, duty, the mission, the greater picture comes for priority, and he doesn't shy away from that. He's quoted as saying as such, "I've known commissars who declare that there is no need to understand soldiers who are in their charge. They say it is enough to demand obedience to creed and mission. Perhaps it should be, but to understand their troops is to be better able to direct them. Sometimes I think the coldest commissars are fearful, though they will never admit this. They're afraid that if they get to know the soldiers as human beings, they will find it more difficult to carry out the merciless aspects of their duty. If this is so, then they are cowards and a disgrace to our uniform." Commissar Sebastian Yarrick is a man who values duty. And that's the type of man Sebastian Yarrick is. He makes the hard choices because someone has to make them, but he doesn't take glee in it, he doesn't lie to himself. He's realistic and he's pragmatic, but he also cares about and loves his men. I mean, hell, in the book Wreckage, he has to send a bunch of guardsmen to their death, and he stays on the radio listening to them die, because he understands the weight of his decision. He doesn't kid, he doesn't joke, he doesn't make a light of a situation, he's not for pomp, for sass, for friss. He is a man that knows, when he pulls that trigger, he is killing a human being, a loyal servant of the Imperium, but he's doing it for a reason. That is the type of man Commissar Sebastian Yarrick is. And I think it really goes to show how he feels about this when he talks about faith, particularly with a sister of battle. TLDR, Commissar Sebastian Yarrick and a bunch of sisters end up fighting a demon, and there's a little bit of warp ooga booga spooky nonsense. But they manage to kill the demon, though several sisters die in the process. This is essentially the aftermath conversation where they talk about what the hell did we just see. Taken from Imperial Creed. I thought about the civilians of Tulsa, millions of the Emperor's faithful, not a single one saved. Would our bitter victory now be extended to the entire planet? That was not the choice I had to make, but I felt its shadow all the same. If I held the world's fate in my hands, I would want to believe I would not seek its salvation through its annihilation. I wanted to believe I would find a way to fight on, to fight harder. Sethano sat beside me. You know what you have to do, she said. Physically, she had recovered strength, but she had not emerged from a struggle with Gashama unscarred. There was a new stillness to her face. She seemed to be denying herself all forms of emotion. The great wound was in her eyes. Her features were still those of a young woman she was, but her eyes were inhumanly ancient. They had once held flecks of gold. Now they were nothing but gold. They were filled with terrible knowledge. You looked, didn't you, into the warp rift? She nodded. I did. Why? I have always sought clarity to know how best to serve the Emperor. She paused, then pronounced a sentence of enormous darkness. I have it now. I said nothing, but I understood. We had both fought the demon with supreme exercises of our will. We had simply chose different paths for the struggle. I am sorry about your sisters, I said. Less than half her squad remained. Thank you, she said distractedly, and I realized she wasn't thinking about current losses. She arose to leave. Free will still counts for something. We are not foredoomed, I told her. We must act if we were not. True? I do not believe that you saw only one future, or all possible ones. Nor do I. Her face was still again, her voice that of a warrior as determined as she was implacable. But we must be certain we can live with the consequences of the ones we help bring out. I will give the Lord Commissar the same chance I chose for myself. Then be well with your choice, Commissar Yarrick. We shall speak again. She left, walking a path shallowed with the deepest clarity. The Imperial Creed is a faith of many facets. It is a faith of discipline, of fire, of vengeance, of will. It has nothing to do with hope. Now reading this, a lot of people seem to think, oh, Sebastian is all gloom and doom, but no. It's the Sister of Battle who's all gloom and doom after having gazed into his Zinchian demon nonsense and saw basically nothing any sane human should see. Commissar Yarrick is just reiterating her point of view. Will, fire, vengeance, determination, not hope. He, however, still has a little bit of hope. But he acknowledges the reality of a situation. That is who Commissar Yarrick is. In the world of Warhammer 40k, filled with demons, monsters, devils, gods, and every damn thing in between, he is a normal man, filled with realistic defiance. But he does not abandon his emotions, nor does he abandon the reality of the situation. But he does not abandon his emotions. He acts in spite of them. In my opinion, Commissar Yarrick is not only one of the greatest Imperial Guard characters, but one of the greatest characters in the setting, because he's the personification of a human man doing every damn thing he can, and surviving in a world that deemed he should not survive. That is who Commissar Sebastian Yarrick is. That is what he represents. And that is what the Imperial Guard of the world of Armageddon represent. Because even if GW won't show them, even if they don't get new models, even if they don't get any new lore, the steel of the legions of Armageddon is not so quickly destroyed. For just like steel, for Armageddon, just like the people of its world, is honed in the fires of war. And steel honed like that does not sunder easy. And with the old men at their head, I think the boys in Armageddon still got a hell of a lot of fight left to give. But regardless of the minor details or the intricacies of it, it's definitely gonna be one hell of a fight. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for watching. Let me know down below, what do you think about this? This video is a bit all over the place. I just saw Yarrick, I got really hyped, and I was like, I want to make a video talking about every little thing here and there. So this is part lore, part theory, part me gushing about Yarrick. Forgive me if this is a bit all over the place. I tried to make it not bad, but if it came out a little funky, I apologize. I was just really excited about new God model, because goddammit I love the God. Also, bring me back Destroying Firstborn. I fucking love Destroying Firstborn. I will make a kill team, not an army, because I'm not a sadist. Y'all who paint Imperial God armies, especially Foot God, y'all got problems. But anyway, I would say a massive thank you guys for watching, but even more massive thank you to my awesome members and Patreons. Shout out to my Lieutenant tier members, Mr. Eddie V3 and Miss Majora of the Void. Shout out to my Sergeant tier members, Mr. Damiak, Mr. Andy McGee, Mr. Bullwin, Mr. Sean IRL7, Mr. Matthew Merrill, Mr. Sergeant Cossack, 68W173D, and Mr. That Guy. Shout out to my corporal tier members, Mr. Tremail the Math Kitty, Lord Rosarius, Tech Priest Toaster, Mr. Bowen, Shauna Smithers, The Gentle Salamander, The Wench of Warhammer, Major Doshinect, Edward King, and Mr. Overanalyze This. And finally, but absolutely not least, shout out to my private tier members, Mr. Thomas Moslons, Mr. Ivan_SBW, Mr. Monkey Man, Mr. Michael Aeda, Mr. Diego Castro, Mr. Portus Unum, Mr. CMD Nay, Mr. Eric Massaro, Mr. Dom Marek, Mr. Ken_Sakura333, Mr. Adrian Von Furen, Mr. Morally Bankrupt, Mr. Matthew Peter, Mr. Joshly 1320, Mr. Adrex X1, Mr. Ethan Elam U71, Mr. Kiri Khan, Mr. Malpace-XB1XE, and Mr. Robert Makorovich. Thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. Soundtrack with memberships get a bunch of awesome benefits behind the scenes stuff, early access to these videos. Not to mention, you're gonna help out your boy. But remember, this will always be free. So whether you give your boy $1 or not, I'll love you just the same. Mwah. But ladies and gentlemen, I've been the General Bradley 101. You've been beautiful, awesome, and amazing people. Thank you all so very much for watching. I'm sure stay loyal there, boys and girls. And I will catch y'all next time. Dismiss, Rangers. Fuck, that old man voice is hard to do.